We have here Willie Corduff to speak in a very practical way about his experiences with the Gardaí. And I'm going to read out a statement that Willie Corduff made for the Garda Ombudsman Commission on the 31st of August 2009. Statement of Willie Corduff, date of birth 27th of January 1954, farmer, Rossport South, Balkans, County Mayo. I'm a farmer and reside in Rossport South with my family. I farm the lands which I inherited from my father. I remember Wednesday, 22nd of April 2009. Around 6:45 a.m. I got a phone call telling us that heavy machinery and gates were being transported to the Shell site in Glengad. Since the year 2000, I have been involved in a campaign with other local people to protect our land and environment from being destroyed by Shell and other big oil companies. The implication of the phone call referred to was that Shell were about to begin work for which they had not got planning permission. Myself and my wife Mary drove down to Glengad, arriving there around 7:30 a.m. There were already about 20 locals there and more kept arriving. We could see a truckload of gates down in the compound. These gates were being unloaded and driven back up towards the road where we were standing. There were a number of Gardaí and security personnel around the site entrance. I spoke with the local man, Jerry Burke, and we decided to walk down a field adjoining the site to see better what was going on. We crossed the sheep fence into the site, walked up and down, and then I decided that I should do something to try to prevent what was happening. I said to Jerry that we should go back and get under the truck with the gates, which was parked with the driver sitting in the cab. Both of us climbed under the truck and lay side by side on the ground between the front and back wheels. Almost immediately, the truck was surrounded by men whose legs we could see. For about an hour, a group of locals came down the same field we had come down and talked with us. Some of them threw in water and fruit to us. I talked with my wife Mary on Jerry's mobile phone and asked her to get in touch with Superintendent Larkin in Belmullet to let him know what was happening and ask him to intervene. After what felt a number of hours in the afternoon, a number of Gardaí in uniform arrived down. They told us to get out from under the truck. Some of them began to kick stones in towards us. Then about 3 of them knelt down under the truck. We told them that we were preventing illegal works from being done and that it was them who should be taking action. They caught my legs and those of Jerry. I requested that they summon the superintendent. After a while they managed to pull Jerry out, but I managed to hold on despite one of the Gardaí pulling my ear. One of them, who I knew to be Inspector Joe Doherty, got very agitated and said, "Willie, we will get you out of there. We will cut the leg of you if we have to." My boots and socks were then pulled off. Inspector Doherty then picked up a stone with a sharp edge and rubbed it up and down my left ankle. This tore the skin of my ankle, which was very painful, and I was roaring. I had by then managed to wedge myself in so that when a Garda Hugh Egan pinched, pulled and hit my fingers against the steel of the lorry, he was unsuccessful. Garda Jerry Burke was there with his video camera. Finally, they gave up and after a while disappeared. Neighbours across in the field managed to get food, water and blankets into me. I remained under the truck until the early hours of the morning. Lots of different people came during that time. The weather was very bad, so I told people to go home, that I would be okay. After it got dark, the security people and the Gardaí disappeared. People who came down the field told me that the Gardaí and security had left from the roadway entrance also. After this, I came out from under the truck occasionally to stretch my legs. At about 3 a.m, I came out and walked back and forward with my brother-in-law, Pete. I heard a noise like people running, so I went to get back in under the truck. Before I reached the truck, I saw a group of maybe 6 to 8 people running from the direction of the back of the truck. 2 of them dropped to their knees at the side of the truck. When I saw that I was not going to make it back under the truck, I turned around to run away, but was grabbed by a number of them. These people were wearing dark clothes and were masked. I could only see their eyes. They said nothing at all. I caught a glimpse of one of these people rise what appeared like a baton a foot long with what appeared to be black leather covering. He hit me on the left side of my head with it and I was shoved to the ground at the same time. I was lying on my right side while people kneeled on me from the top of my shoulder to my knee. It felt like there were 3 to 4 people kneeling on me because it was very heavy. My arms had been brought up behind the back of my head. It became very hard to breathe as it felt like my chest was being very compressed. It became very hard to get my breath. One of them put his knee into my left ear. This had a fierce effect. It seemed like I was losing feeling in my head. As this was taking place, they were pushing my face into the stony ground. I felt that I was going to die, that they were going to kill me. At no stage during this time did they speak to me nor to each other. At intervals, the grip on my hands was loosened. After a couple of times, I decided to let my hands and body go limp and let my tongue fall out the side of my mouth. I did this because I was getting scared and remembered what had happened to opponents to Shell in Nigeria. I pictured my wife Mary and my children in front of me. I heard one of them say to another, "Leave him now, he is nearly gone." I think at one stage I had blanked out. I heard myself in a dull voice asking for Mary or someone to help me. Then I heard a voice say, "I'm a paramedic, Willie. I'm here to help you." I became aware of someone kneeling beside me. This person put his head down beside my face. It felt like he was checking my breathing. I could smell alcohol from his breath. This made me feel afraid. He said he was going to tear my sleeve to take my blood pressure, which he did, but didn't take my blood pressure. I didn't know what he was going to do, so I kept calling for help. I became aware of people gathering the other side of the fence. I couldn't open my eyes. No matter how hard I tried, I could only catch a glimmer. I could hear my son, Liam, shouting to get into me. I became aware of the presence of someone who said, "It's only Willie at his old tricks again." I heard someone say to me that he was from the ambulance. He began to put a collar on my neck and rolled me onto the stretcher. I was aware of what was going on, but was only able to say that I could not open my eyes. The ambulance man kept reassuring me that I would be able to open them. I felt exhausted and think I slept for most of the journey. I arrived in the hospital around 6 a.m. and after a couple of hours began to get very sick. I began to vomit and sweat a lot. I stayed in the hospital until the following day after lunchtime. I was in agony with pains all over my body for a few weeks. I still suffer from pains in both shoulders. I believe this is a result of the compression which the men subjected me to. The reason I have not made a formal report about what happened on the night of 23rd of April 2009 is that I have felt that I have nobody to make a complaint to. It felt impossible to go into Belmullet Garda Station to make a complaint to someone who was party to the attack on me that day. Signed, Willie Corduff. I can say personally that I saw Willie Corduff just 3 days after that attack in a bed in his house, and I saw the state that his legs were in, and I saw the state Willie was in. I believe Willie Corduff. Willie is going to say a few words now. Would you mind coming up to the mic, Willie? So we can all look at you. Nice.
Well, after that, it's very hard to talk. You know, what do you say? You know, we went to Glengad for a purpose to stop the Shell from doing what they were doing in SACs and NHAs, which the people of Erris have protected all their life. You know, I'm here now and I have no trust in anybody, which is sad. I cannot, you know, Dennis has said there, he says there's good guards and bad guards, which there probably is. But the reason I am here today is for them good guards to come out and whistle blow on the bad guards. You know, and hopefully it will get us somewhere. But staying quiet and staying at home, knowing what happened was wrong, and not doing anything about it, you know, is not going to solve anything for us. You know, we're still in the fight. There isn't a whole lot we can do at the minute, but hope that the likes of Joe and Dennis and all these people had rallied behind us. I want to thank them for staying behind us. We had several people at the beginning with us, but to go looking for them now, you'd wonder how far up in the clouds they are. You know, they just, I don't know, was it money or what took them away from us. But I want to thank the people that stuck to us. You know, and that's why I'm here today to put out a plea to Enda Kinney and the Justice Minister. If they're going to have an investigation into the Guards, the first investigation they need to do is into the Corrib Gas. It's the most scandalous thing that ever happened in this country. You know, we're mind-boggled at it. We cannot understand what the Guards did to us. I pleaded at every protest, I suppose, I pleaded with the Guards to call meetings with ourselves and with Shell and with the government. And I might as well tell you the way they answered me, fuck off with it. Them were the words they used. So I don't think there's any harm for me using them when the police force will use them. So, you know, that's really, we're not here for trying to get money out of the beatings that was given to us and all that. We could have stayed at home and did nothing. But I'm pleading with the people and with the government to come out and resolve it before it gets too late and before, you know, it's a mystery that people haven't got killed. They have got killed on the project, which we said would happen, that somebody should never finish and somebody got killed on it. But if it ever gets up and running, which I think it will, I still think it won't. Why? I don't know. So if it ever gets up and running, most people I'm going to blame for it are the Guards. And until the Guards comes out and protect themselves and say that it wasn't their doing, tell us where they got the command from, what authority told them to do what they done, because it was beyond their remit what they did. The Guards were never meant to beat people and throw them into the drains and get a high match and push people aside to get into an entrance through a gate. I mean, it was scandalous what happened. So, I mean, that's what we're looking for. And until that happen, if the project ever gets up and running and something to happen, we have it recorded that it's the Guards that were the cause of bringing it here. Otherwise, it would never be here but for the Guards. When I got beaten, Tony McNamara, our superintendent at the time, he made statements first thing in the morning where he got his information. It wasn't from me, he didn't contact me. He made a statement in the morning that I walked onto the ambulance. But I didn't walk onto the ambulance, I was stretchered onto the ambulance. So when you're getting that kind of feedback, so, you know, you wonder where it's all going to end. So I'm just hoping that there will be an investigation into that will all be someday, probably, I'd probably be dead before that. But hopefully for our kids and our grandkids that it will be solved before it's too late. So I think now, you have heard all about my beating and about everything, there's no point for here. Hopefully we'll get there. There's still a lot of people with us and behind us, you know. Shell are trying everything they can to get going in the community. We haven't the money Shell have got. If we had, Shell wouldn't be here now. You know, they're putting silly little projects and community centres and this, that and the other, and people are falling for them, and people are going to them and, you know, nearly congratulating them at this stage. But I'm not one of them people. I'm in the same place as I was in 2000. And that's where I'll be to the day I die. So anybody that thinks any different about Willie Corduff, they're wrong. So that's, I want to thank you all for supporting us and keep supporting us, and we'll get there. And without the support of the people, we'll get nowhere. You know. So thank you very much for.
While Willie was speaking there, has a strange buzz happened in the sound system just over the last few minutes?
It's gone again now.
It's probably moved.
It's sounding okay now, yeah? While Willie was speaking there, it struck me that looking at Jerry Conlon's photograph, that when Jerry Conlon was released after 15 years wrongful imprisonment in 1989, one of the first public events he went on was called the Parade of Innocence for the Birmingham Six. The Birmingham Six served 17 years in jail, and there was a famous judgment called the Denning Judgment and a Birmingham Six appeal where the Lord of the Rolls, Lord Justice Denning, said that the notion that over 40 British police could conspire to pervert the course of justice was such an appalling vista that it could not possibly be true. So that the Birmingham Six served their 17 years of wrongful imprisonment, they had told the truth. They were, a conspiracy of lies was concocted by over 40 police officers, many promoted afterwards. And that there is a parallel, I think, in Willie's case, that Jerry Connon's photo, who Jerry Connon might have been with us here today, and there he is. He's the one who, having been in prison for 15 years himself, when he got out, campaigned for the truth to be told about others who were treated as he was. Anyway, that's the thought that was running through my head. I think it's very appropriate that our next speaker should follow Willie, because Benny McCabe took statements from Willie and from other people in the area over the last few years. Bernard McCabe is the former Garda Sergeant who worked in the Commissioner's office in Garda headquarters in the Phoenix Park for several years. Having left the Gardaí, he became involved in human rights work, monitoring elections, etc. in many countries throughout the developing world. In recent years, he has worked as a psychologist with victims of torture and severe ill treatment with Sparazi. He went to Erris as a human rights monitor on behalf of Afri in 2009, for which he made the following statement. After which he made the following statement: I have worked as a human rights observer with the UN, the EU and the OSCE in Cambodia, the Balkans, South Africa and in many post-conflict situations, but I have never been treated the way I was in Glengad. Benny McCabe.
I think where I'm at in this whole thing is the question for me is how to be effective. And I think in order to be effective, one has to understand. The more we deepen our understanding of what we're involved in, then the greater chance to be effective. I first met Donald Kelly in Managua in Nicaragua in the mid-80s. So I went myself from being a sergeant in the Commissioner's office, from being a detective, into becoming involved in the revolution with the Sandinistas, where I spent 3 years.
Okay, go now, Benny, just to see if that's okay.
And in those years, okay?
Yeah, can you hear at the back? No. Okay, go ahead.
And I think one of the interesting things about Nicaragua was, in the 80s, Nicaragua was the number 2 priority in terms of US foreign policy. The first was the Soviet Union, and secondly was Nicaragua. Nicaragua was a tiny country, about the size of Ireland, about the population of Ireland. That was number 2 in US foreign policy, because Nicaragua had dared to take the decision that its resources would be used for the benefit of its people. And I think there's a parallel here in terms of what's happening with Shell. In Nicaragua, you met interesting people, and one of the people I met was a guy called John Stockwell, who was former CIA director of covert operations in Angola. He was a colonel in the Marines, and he was in charge of the CIA. But he had turned, he had seen what was going on. And Stockwell said that the rules of the game, and it's important to understand the rules of the game. The rules of the game say you can kill as many people as you like, so long as they're brown or black or yellow. The one thing you must never do is you must never threaten Western capital. Because if you threaten Western capital, they will kill you. And I think there's a parallel in terms of what's happening here in Rossport. Shell is Western capital. A number of people have had the audacity to stand up and to go beyond the protest. And the rules of the game say then that the institutions of state will take you out. So, the strategies vary. The first strategy is seduction. You seduce people, you offer them money, you offer them jobs. So again, if we look to the evidence, you can see, and we know the names of the people from the Garda Síochána and from Mayo County Council who've got nice jobs with Shell. and the other people who've taken jobs with that. So the first thing is you try and seduce people. The second thing, if that doesn't work, is you intimidate people. And if we look to the experience of people when Willie and when the others went to the High Court in the expectation that justice would be done, they were told by the President of the High Court, who called them in, and this is one of the things that got me involved in Rossport when I heard this story. They were called in and asked what they owned, what property they owned. And then they were told, if you do not do what I say, I will see that everything you own is taken from you. And the people went out to the corridor, and he gave them 10 minutes to make that decision. They looked at each other and they said, we will not bend the knee. And then they paid the price. They went to jail. And I think that intimidation continues. Mary Corduff and myself.
Sorry, Benny.
Okay.
Sorry, Benny.
Okay, maybe I'm too close, am I?
No.
I got to get the
Does
distance.
that make
out.
any difference?
Right there now, that's okay for now.
Right there.
Okay. Is that okay? Okay. Yeah. So in terms of the intimidation, just some more examples of the intimidation. When Mary Corduff and myself, in different instances, having tried to get justice at different levels, when we contemplated going for a judicial review, we were told by sympathetic lawyers who would have taken on our cases that we had to be prepared to lose our homes, that was the bottom line. When the solitaire was in, Pat O'Donnell's house was buzzed by a Garda helicopter. It came in and it buzzed his house. These are facts. And then when the intimidation doesn't work, then violence is the bottom line. So Willie has explained what happened to him in terms of when he took that direct action and went under the truck. When Pat O'Donnell refused to desist, we know what happened in terms of his vote. So for me, this is the reality. These are the rules of the game. So people here have had the audacity not to bend the knee. So they are now being subjected to all the forces of the state, legal and illegal. So for me, the issue, most of this debate takes place within the discourse is taken in the register of the legal. What is legal, what is illegal, an economic discourse, what is good for our country. So it's in an economic discourse, it's in a legal discourse. But the one discourse, which I think is really important and which Willie has alluded to, is the discourse of truth. So for me, this goes beyond an economic or a legal discourse in terms of what's right and wrong. For me, this is a mythical confrontation between darkness and light, between truth and the lie. And I think darkness and the lie is represented by the thuggery of the guards, which I myself have witnessed and which I myself have experienced. Yeah? Not all of them by any means. I'm aware from interviewing people that there were guards who were appalled by what their colleagues were doing and by the instructions that they got. And I think the hope is, here as Willie says, that people will speak the truth, because the truth is really important. Right? So for me, and the darkness is represented by the guards who did the thuggery, who battened people with their batons, threw women into ditches, but also by the men in the balaclavas in the dark of night, and also by the Gardaí, who I witnessed, who took their identification numbers off their shelves, so they couldn't be identified. I've seen these men myself. I've seen them in the darkness of the night without identification numbers doing the things which were illegal. So it was legitimate that Willie and the people of Rossport would expect the Gardaí to carry out their duty impartially, to see that the law was carried out. That didn't happen. So it was then legitimate for them to go to GSOC and expect from GSOC an oversight. Last week, Ray Leonard, who was the 4th member of the membership of GSOC. You had the 3 GSOC commissioners and Ray Leonard, who was in charge of investigations. He was personally in charge of investigations of all criminality in the Gardaí, and he oversaw the disciplinary. He resigned. And what he said was this: he joined GSOC 7 years ago in the hope of making Ireland a better place, in the hope of improving policing. He said GSOC was not fit for purpose, and he said that GSOC did not have the independence necessary to carry out investigations impartially into the Gardaí. This is one of the managers of GSOC saying this, and he said that after 7 years, the effect that he had was negligible. So, the expectations which we have in terms of the institutions of our state to protect us, to enforce the law in terms of the Gardaí, in terms of GSOC, the experience has been that is an unrealistic hope at this stage. It's unrealistic because of what this issue is about. So for me, there is the political and then there's the personal. So in terms of me, my own trying to understand this, I see it as a struggle between light and dark, between the lie and between truth. So what I see, my understanding is this: it's a mythical confrontation between the light and the dark. So I look to people to myth. A very important book is The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell, which talks about myth. And the story goes like this. A person is leading their life. They're doing the things that they do every day. Here, people are going about their farming, about their lives, they're going about fishing. They're going to honour the ancestors who created this way of living in this very, very beautiful place, not just in Ireland, but in the world. And I've lived in many parts of the world. This is one of the most beautiful places. And there is the sense of the ancestors here and what they've passed on and what people here want to pass on to those who are coming after them. So the person is living their lives. Something happens. It can be anything. In your case, it was Shell arrived one day and people started walking on your lands and telling you what they were going to do. So something happens. So then there is a call. Do I just ignore what's going on? Do I try and continue with my life? Or do I heed the call and take a stand? And if you take a stand, there is a price to be paid. You can ignore the call and get on with your life as best you can. The heroic journey in myth would then say the hero goes out on the journey and leaves all of the stuff that made their life viable behind. And then the going gets rough, because then the hero descends into the hell realm and may or may not survive the hell realm. If the hero survives the hell realm, then they have a boon, because they've gone into hell and they've survived it. And they're all the better person for having done that, because anybody who's gone into the hell realm knows how rough it is. The hero then has a boon to offer to the community, because they've done the work for the community. And the hero then can choose whether to go back to the community with the boon or whether to just take it for themselves. Yeah? So for me, this is the only way I can understand what's going on here in Rossport. It's of mythic dimensions. It's really important for me that you understand the rules of the game. I used to have the expectation myself that GSOC would do something about it. I have no expectation whatsoever of GSOC. I have no expectation whatsoever of the judiciary, because of what's at stake here. So it's really important. There is the political dimension, there's the legal dimension, but there's the personal dimension. Because of my work that I did with victims of torture who came here seeking asylum from all parts of the world, who had stood up and put their head above the parapet, wherever it was, mainly African countries, Middle Eastern countries, it's really important that people are aware of the personal dimension of it as well. There's a tremendous price to be paid in this. The work that I did, and lots of the stuff here that has gone on could be regarded as torture. Not torture in the classical individual sense that you have a torture, but in terms of what people have been subjected to, of the unpredictability, of feeling powerlessness, all of those type of things. I could draw out that argument in terms of what you've been subjected to is a form of torture. So in terms of the journey of torture, this is really important, I think, at a personal level, because the personal is equally as important as the political, the micro in terms of the macro. In terms of that journey, the first thing for the person who has been subjected to trauma is what we call stage one is affect regulation. Because the person who suffered trauma constantly is thinking, if I did that, when they did that, there is no respite from the thoughts. They cannot sleep at night, or if they do sleep, nightmares. So there's no place for respite. There's no place to replenish. That affects you mentally, it affects you physically, it affects you emotionally, it affects your health. That's very important to realise. Your health and your well-being is important. I think it would be a tragedy if people here gave their lives to Shell. The next stage in terms of sort of this journey is to process what has happened, to be able to talk about what's happened and the effect it's had on me, the effect it's had on my family. And the third possibility is then to regain connectedness with my life apart from this trauma that I've suffered. So that is the journey. A number of years ago I met Michael Lapsley. Michael Lapsley was an Anglican priest who was involved with the ANC. Michael Lapsley went into exile, and it looked as though the conflict was coming to an end, so they let their guard down. And one day he got a little booklet, and it said religious periodicals. So he took it in, he opened it up, it was a parcel bomb. It blew his two arms off, he's two claws now, he's got one eye, and he's very hard of hearing. And Michael Lapsley talked about the effect that had on his life, a catastrophic effect. And he talked about how, in terms of torture, that one is a victim. And then the challenge is to become a survivor. Many people who are victims of torture and trauma don't survive. They don't survive for many different reasons. The next step is to be a survivor. And the final potentiality is to be a victor. And I think that is the challenge for people here who have been involved in this now, is to move on to that stage of becoming victorious. Not necessarily in terms of sort of what would be objective in terms of the pipe or the refinery or things like that. But I think the important thing is not to allow this to poison you and to take away from your life individually and your life of your family and for those coming after you. Like Willie said, I think there are good guards as well as there are bad guards. I've seen the bad ones in action. I know them. I've also seen the good ones and I've seen the good things they do. And my appeal here today is to re-echo what Willie has sort of said, to plead for those guards who have a conscience, who know what went on in the darkness, who know the briefings that they were given, who know the real story, who will bear witness to truth, to come forth at this stage. I've talked to you about John Stockwell in terms of the effect that his understanding in terms of the big picture. We know about Chelsea Manning. We know about these people who have really helped us understand what are the real forces at work in our lives. And my appeal today is to re-echo Willie's, that those people would come forth, speak to me, I'm willing to talk to you confidentially, or Afri or whatever, so that the truth, so that light can be shone into this dark chapter. Thank you.
Thanks very much to Benny McCabe for that very interesting talk, and he reminded me, in fact, when he talked about being victorious. Last Saturday at Jerry Conlon's funeral in Belfast, in St. Peter's Cathedral in Belfast, Gareth Pearce, the human rights lawyer, gave the oration, and she finished it up after talking about Jerry for a long time. She finished it up by saying Jerry became victorious despite everything that was placed in his way. And one of the mottos that Gareth Pearce has used over recent years, because she also acted for people Dennis mentioned, Mayo veterans who had been maimed by British forces in the 1950s. She successfully got them an apology from the British government, but the phrase she uses is end impunity. And while if a culture of impunity exists within a police force or within an army, it's extremely difficult to break it down because the perpetrators get promoted. So it becomes ingrained in the whole structure of the institution. And it would be an appalling vista to think that that will be the case in our own Garda Síochána. And I think, reiterating what Benny said, there is hope that there are within the Garda Síochána people who would be brave enough to blow the whistle.